In the Appalachian hills, they didn't keep birth records like most towns. Too many secrets, too many names. But one name echoes through the narrow valleys like a curse: Mary Ellen Harps. The first time anyone in the county saw her belly swell, she was 15, and it wasn't from food. Her eyes were downcast, her cheeks were pale. And when the child came, he bore a face they all recognized, a face too close to hers, too close to someone else's. That winter of 1927 was unusually harsh, but no one forgot the baby born deep in the Kentucky woods in a single-room shack. No doctor attended, just her father, Elijah Harps, a man known more for his rifle than his prayers. The crying the neighbors heard wasn't the baby's, it was hers. You have to understand, this wasn't just poverty. This wasn't some accident of chance. This was design. Lineage, they'd say. Purity of blood. The Harps didn't trust outsiders. They believed the world was infected. And Elijah, raised by a mother who read scripture backward and salted the earth before childbirth, had one aim: to keep the line unbroken. Even if that meant fathering a son through his own daughter. It wasn't the first time something like this happened in the region, but it was the first time the child lived. And it was the first time the girl, Mary Ellen, spoke. Just before the child opened his eyes, she whispered something to the midwife who helped her in secret. "He's my brother. He's my son." The midwife, an older black woman from the edge of town, fled the hills that same night. She never came back. She never said another word to anyone about what she saw in that shack. Years later, someone found her journal buried in a trunk. About that day, she wrote one sentence: that child had something behind his eyes. Not like a baby. Something old, something wrong. And that was just the beginning. They say the land remembers what men try to bury. The land around the Harp property, swallowed by kudzu and steeped in silence, still feels like it's watching you. Decades have passed, but locals won't go near it. Hunters say their dogs whimper near the tree line. Surveyors get sick when they step past the rusted fence. Some things don't forget. After the birth, Mary Ellen was never seen in town again. Not at Sunday service, not at the general store. It was like she vanished, though people say they saw her through the trees, barefoot, thin, walking in circles near the creek, always holding the boy, never smiling. No name was given to him, at least not one people agreed on. Some said Elijah called him Jacob. Others said he never spoke the boy's name at all, as if saying it out loud would confirm something they all feared. The midwife's journal called him the Echo, as if he wasn't new, but a reflection of something that shouldn't have returned. Children in nearby hollers told stories of seeing the boy on the ridgeline, never aging, always watching. He didn't speak. He didn't go to school. But when lightning struck the mountain in '34 and started a fire that took 6 homes, he was seen standing at the edge of the flames, not screaming, just watching. One man, drunk and full of bravado, claimed he went up to the Harps' cabin one night on a dare. He said he saw Mary Ellen rocking the child, even though he should have been 7 or 8 by then. But the child didn't look 7. He looked the same. Same face, same size, same eyes. He wasn't growing, the man whispered, before he stopped talking altogether. A month later, he shot himself in the chest with a shotgun in his barn. The local sheriff, pressured by rumors and a state inspector's visit, finally hiked up the mountain in the summer of 1936. But when he got there, the cabin was empty. No blood, no furniture, no bodies. Just carvings. Every wall was etched with names. Some were familiar, others weren't. But every single one of them led back to the same bloodline. What happened up there wasn't just sin. It was structure. A ritual. And Mary Ellen, she wasn't the first. She was just the one they couldn't keep hidden anymore. When a family chooses isolation, the world often forgets them. But the Harps didn't just vanish into obscurity, they cultivated it. Elijah believed the outside world had been corrupted by modern sins, doctors, education, lawmen. He built his family into a sealed-tight closed circuit, where blood ran only in circles. He told Mary Ellen that her womb would heal the Harp line, that she'd been chosen, not defiled. What the town didn't know, what they couldn't have guessed, was that this cycle had started generations earlier. In the 1860 census, an E. Harp was listed as head of household with a wife and 2 daughters. But by 1870, the daughters were gone, and a new child appeared with no listed mother. The handwriting on the record changed, but the location stayed the same, Harp Hollow. Historians who later studied the genealogy called it congenital looping, a grotesque term for a grotesque design. The same surnames folded over themselves again and again, like a family tree strangling its own branches. Children were born with mirrored eyes, jawlines too exact, illnesses passed down that had no name in medical literature. Mary Ellen's child, Jacob, if that was truly his name, wasn't just the product of inbreeding. He was the final step in a long line of genetic reduction. And it showed. The few who glimpsed him described movements that weren't right. His arms too stiff, his skin pale in a way that seemed waxy, not human. But it was the eyes that disturbed them most, wide, unblinking, and aware in ways that shouldn't have been possible in a boy. One local woman who once brought canned goods to the cabin in a church charity effort said she saw Elijah scolding Mary Ellen, but not in anger, in worship. She claimed he knelt before her, whispered scripture against her stomach, and wept. She left the food at the edge of the woods and never returned. Her last words before moving to Ohio were, "They weren't raising a child. They were raising something through him." And then there's the story of the mirror. In 1938, a traveling preacher stopped in town, warning of signs and omens in the hills. He told a congregation that evil doesn't always appear as fire and fury. Sometimes it's a face too familiar. He claimed to have looked into a mirror that belonged to the Harps, and in it, he didn't see his own reflection. He saw a child smiling back, whose eyes never blinked. Some truths aren't buried, they're walled in. Decades later, when the land was being surveyed for development, a backhoe operator struck something solid beneath the Harp property. They thought it was a well. It wasn't. What they unearthed was a small stone structure sealed tight with handmade bricks, covered in faded symbols. Crosses turned upside down, crude runes scratched in with nails, and names written over names, all in childlike handwriting. Inside, they found a single room with a dirt floor, no light, no furniture. And in the center, a cradle made of bone and wood, arranged in a shape that no one wanted to touch. Above it, hanging from the ceiling with rusty twine, was a mobile made from small animal skulls. It spun on its own when they opened the chamber. No breeze, no explanation. Authorities were called, but the case went nowhere. No remains, no crime on the books, just whispers. The structure was quietly reburied under concrete. The official record says it was an abandoned root cellar. But the man who found it quit that week, moved to Arizona, and told his wife at night, "I saw a child's face drawn on every wall down there. Dozens of them. Same face, same eyes." By then, Mary Ellen was folklore, a ghost in the woods. But the thing is, folklore doesn't leave footprints. And someone did. In 1952, hikers reported seeing a figure near the old Harp clearing. Said it was a boy, maybe 12 years old, with a face that looked like it hadn't changed since the Depression. He followed them for nearly a mile without making a sound. When they turned to confront him, he was gone. Locals blamed moonshine, hallucination, trauma. But in the county archives, tucked inside an old folder marked miscellaneous, undated, is a photograph, faded, torn. A family of 3 stands outside the Harp cabin, a bearded man holding a rifle, a gaunt, barefoot girl, and between them, a child. His face is smudged, but the eyes are untouched, clear, wide, dead center. The date written on the back is 1930, but the paper stock and ink, they're from the 1960s. If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline? Time does strange things in places the world forgets. Out there among the ash trees and crumbling fence posts, it's hard to tell if years have passed or if they've looped, like the Harp bloodline itself. By the early 1970s, amateur genealogists started probing rural Kentucky for lost family histories. One woman, a doctoral candidate from Ohio State, claimed she'd uncovered an unbroken chain of inbreeding in Harp Hollow spanning over 120 years. She called it the spiral. She said it wasn't just cultural, it was intentional, a generational compulsion, a lineage so closed it began to feed on itself psychologically, genetically, spiritually. She conducted interviews with nearby families, people who refused to even say the Harp name. One elderly man admitted that when he was a child, his father warned him, "If you hear crying from the trees, don't follow it. It's not a baby. It's something looking for its mother." The researcher published a paper draft, never officially released, that hinted at a phenomenon she called centropic heredity, a belief system where a bloodline aims to compress itself to a single vessel, one child, to hold the totality of ancestral memory, trauma, and power. Her theory: Jacob wasn't supposed to grow. He was supposed to contain. But before her work could be defended, she disappeared. No signs of foul play. Her cabin near the hollow was found abandoned, her tape recorder still running. The last thing it captured wasn't a voice. It was the sound of soft humming, followed by a child's breath. Years later, hikers found an open book wedged in the roots of a tree near the Harp land. The page, Psalm 139 verse 13. For thou hast possessed my reins. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. Written beneath it in a shaking hand, he was never born. He was past. To this day, there's a standing rumor among archivists that the U.S. government quietly condemned the Harp property as unsuitable for habitation, though no such designation exists publicly. But then, why do satellite images always glitch over that exact square mile? Why do drones lose signal midair? Why do digital maps shift the coordinates ever so slightly, like something doesn't want to be seen? What happened to Mary Ellen and her son may never be fully known, but the land still holds the silence. And sometimes, just before dawn, people swear they hear two voices echo through the fog, one low, one high, singing the same lullaby over and over. They say madness echoes loudest in blood that's never allowed to rest. And in the case of Mary Ellen Harps, madness was never an accident. It was cultivated, refined, passed like a cursed heirloom. By the time the 1980s came around, the story of the Harps had become legend. A cautionary tale told in whispers by old men playing cards, or muttered by mothers who wanted their children home before dusk. But stories don't survive that long unless there's something anchoring them to the world. And in this case, there was. One night in 1986, a traveling journalist from Cincinnati, working on a series about Appalachian poverty, decided to visit the site. He brought a Polaroid camera, a field recorder, and a bottle of bourbon. His last known recording was found by local rescue teams 3 days later. In the final moments of the tape, his voice drops to a whisper, "There's a light in the shack. I swear to God, I think it's her. Same face as the photo. But she's not old. She hasn't aged." Then static. The photos he took were smeared, overexposed, warped like the light bent wrong, except for one. A child's footprint in the dust, surrounded by a circle of ash. No adult prints nearby, just the single path walking in and out of frame. Later analysis confirmed the foot belonged to someone between the ages of 2 and 5, but it matched a footprint found decades earlier, preserved in a jar in the county archive. That one was labeled Harp Child, 1931. Experts called it a coincidence. Locals knew better. Because there are still sightings, once every decade like clockwork. Always a boy, always in the same place, never older than 5. In 1999, a group of teens dared each other to spend the night near the Harp property. They lasted until 2:14 a.m. Then, one of them ran screaming down the mountain, shirt torn, arms scratched. When they asked him what he saw, he just shook his head and kept repeating the same word, smiling. 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 The others didn't speak about it for years, but in 2011, one finally came forward. Said the boy had walked up to their campfire. Said he looked just like Mary Ellen. Said his mouth didn't move when he spoke, but they heard him anyway, inside their heads. I want to go home. Will you be my mother? There are some stories that linger, not because they were told, but because they were never finished. The tale of Mary Ellen Harps and the child she bore isn't just one of horror. It's one of distortion, of identity stretched until it breaks, of bloodlines twisted into something unrecognizable, yet still human enough to weep in the dark. What happened to Mary Ellen after that final sighting remains unknown. No official death record, no grave. Just her name, carved faintly into the beams of the Harp cabin, once near the ceiling, once beneath the floor, as if she was trying to escape both heaven and hell and found no exit in either direction. And as for the child, Jacob, the echo, whatever name you give it, it's still seen. Not often, not by many, but enough to keep the warnings alive. A forest ranger in 2019 swore he found small handprints on the inside of his truck window after patrolling near the Harp land. It had rained that night. The prints were on the inside. And then there's the footage, leaked online by an anonymous source, pulled from a trail camera set up to monitor wildlife. 3 seconds, grainy, night vision. A small boy steps into frame, stares directly at the lens. Doesn't move. Doesn't blink. Then the footage cuts out. But before it does, just for a moment, you can hear something. Faint. A hum. A lullaby. The same one described by the midwife in her journal nearly a century ago. The same one the journalist recorded in 1986. The same one hikers whisper they've heard just before sunrise. There is no house left, no family. Just the hollow. A place where the laws of time, blood, and sanity no longer apply. Where the echo of one girl's womb, defiled, manipulated, sanctified by the man who raised her, still cries out through the trees, not as a scream, but as a song. And if you ever hear it, if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of those woods with the fog wrapping around your feet and the trees whispering names you've never spoken, turn around. Because some children don't need to grow up. Some are born to wait. And one is still waiting for the only mother he's ever known. Mary Ellen, forever buried beneath his skin and behind his eyes.